Hello, everyone. We want to welcome you in for data visualization and reporting for PowerPoint Addicts. That's today's webinar topic. My name is Avi, and I am the product manager here at Datum. On behalf of our team, I want to welcome you all to this webinar here today. You are in good hands with Dr. John Foster today. I wanted to review a few quick logistics for those of you that are new joining us today, or for those of you that have joined us before. So first, we do have a few people on the call as well, so please make sure you are on mute as to not disturb Dr. Foster while he's teaching. We do encourage feedback and commentary and questions. So if you'd like to participate in class, we have two ways that you can participate. There's either the chat feature, which goes into the chat box, and Dr. Foster can see any questions there. Or if you'd like to verbally speak up, we have the raising hand feature as well, which is in the bottom middle of your screen. I'll be sitting here throughout the webinar today. Should there be any technical questions or any questions in general, or you'd like to have further discussions, my email is avi@datum.io, avi@datum, DAYTUM.io. Please feel free to email me about anything. And finally, we do love your feedback. If you'd like to see topics covered in the future or have any questions, concerns, please feel free to fill out a quick survey at datum.io/feedback. We do review all of the feedback forms and try and incorporate them to the best of our abilities. Next, if you'd like access to our content, we are working on granting access to those of you that attend our webinars. You will be put on a wait list currently as we finalize a few items. The waitlist access is datum.io/access, and you'll quickly fill out a Google form. You can't connect to the Wi-Fi network. You might want to, and from there you'll have, sorry, my Google went off there. From there you'll have to fill out a quick Google form with your GitHub username, and you will be on our waitlist from there. And lastly, we are running a promo for our longer term events. These are the 1-hour webinars. But if you'd like to see our longer term content that Dr. John Foster and Dr. Michael Perch teach, we have a 5-day one, a 4-day one, and two 2-day ones as well. These are deep dives into energy machine learning, energy data science. Dr. Foster teaches a lot about the open source Python ecosystem and gives very concrete examples related to oil and gas. And Dr. Perch covers a variety of machine learning methodologies, everything from linear regression to decision trees, all the way into neural networks as well. So if you are interested in these, we are running a promo. Just use the discount code DATUMFRIEND25. Quickly, before I hand it off to Kunal, I wanted to share one more thing here. So here we can see, so this is the Eventbrite page that has all of our upcoming events. These are our longer term workshops that are coming up pretty soon. So if you'd like to attend these and dive a lot deeper into these topics, feel free to join us for these. We have a few spots left open. This is what the Google form looks like for classroom access. The important part is just creating a free GitHub username. If you don't know how to create one, there's instructions up here to do that, and you will be on our wait list. And finally, this is what the classroom will look like as you are granted access for this. So it'll be coverage of all of our topics, videos, lectures, workflows as well. So with that, I would like to hand it off to our CEO, Kunal Riker. Kunal, the floor is all yours, my friend.
Thanks, Avi. Okay. Hey, everyone. My name is Kunal Riker. I'm the CEO here at Datum. Appreciate you all spending the next hour with us as we explore the land of data visualization and reporting for PowerPoint Addicts. Thought I'd spend a minute just giving you a little bit of background on our company and our team for those of you who are new to us. Datum is an energy-focused data science education and training company. We do the hard work of translating the best of what data science and code really has to offer into something useful for us as energy industry professionals. Our MO and our is to build interdisciplinary training programs that really marry the best of geoscience, petroleum engineering, and data science together, and to teach those programs to professionals who are interested in doing it for themselves. As an example, from the partners we've worked with over the last couple of years, we've helped save over 1,000 hours in automation and reporting with courses like the one you're about to hear about today. We really do this via a three-pronged approach. The first is our workshops, where we introduce data science concepts like the one you're sitting in now. The second are our enterprise programs, where we do deep dives into helping you do more with your data. And the third, as Avi alluded to, is our self-paced learning management system, to where you can engage on your own learning journey at the pace that works best for you. Now, a little bit about our team. If I had to sum it up in one word, it would probably be interdisciplinary. Our team is comprised of folks who are experts in oil and gas, both the subsurface and on the engineering side, software engineering, data science, analytics, HSC, and finance. And so whether you're interested in building analytics or automating workflows in something petroleum engineering related, geo related, or finance related, we have the skills and the capabilities to help you do that. All you really have to do is just ask. And so with that quick introduction, I'm sure you're itching to learn how you're going to replace PowerPoint. So I'll hand it off for your lecturer this morning, the one and only Dr. John Foster.
All right, thanks, Kunal. Guess I'll start by sharing my screen. And as we'll see, we don't have to actually replace PowerPoint, but we can work hand in hand with it, but hopefully with less personal interaction. So the first thing I want to point you to is, if you would like to follow along a little closer, if you go to github.com/datum, there's a repository there, Python for PowerPoint. There's a set of files there that I'll come back to at the end and explain a little bit more about. But for now, if you just wanted to follow along, there's a link here that says PowerPoint files for webinar. And if you click on that, it's going to take you to a SharePoint site, which you should have read-only access to. And there's 3 PowerPoint files in there. One of them is called Daily Report. One of them is called Datum Template, and one of them is called Datum Template Markup. And we'll be looking at all of those, and I'll describe what each of them are. So to start, let's look at Daily Report, or I'll look at Daily Report. And this is kind of a template example for the types of report that we may look to automate, right? So for better or worse, in industry settings, PowerPoint has become I'm sorry, I need to stop my Slack notifications real quick. They're popping up and distracting me. Okay, so for better or worse, PowerPoint's become an industry reporting tool, and oftentimes you'll see things that are forwarded around as emails that may just look something like this, right? So some title slide and some slides that include some information. So in this case, and these can be made as fancy as you wish, but in this case, basically the title is the API number of a well, and then here in the well, you have some oil production, some gas production. We're fitting decline curves to them. So the dashed lines are the actual production histories, and the red lines are decline fits. We'll make no comment about the goodness of those fits. There was really no attempt for these to be great fits or anything like that, but rather just for demonstration purposes here. So we have the solid lines are decline curves fit to the data. And then based on those decline curves out to 200 months, these are some summary economics for this exact well, right? Pulling, some costs from a different input deck. So, these are typical sort of reservoir engineering exercises. And often these types of reports are generated, weekly, monthly, yearly, various increments by reservoir engineers, and oftentimes with a lot of human interaction, right? So that's sort of what we're going to look at. A couple of ways we can reduce the human interaction, automate some of these types of processes. Okay, so we'll go over to our Jupyter Lab setting. If you take one of our courses, you'll be given access to this environment. Today, I'm just basically going to be working from blank Jupyter notebooks or relatively blank Jupyter notebooks, and we'll build up the tools we need as we go here. So a lot of the building blocks and things we're going to cover today are covered in the Energy Data Science workshop course, which we're running next week. It'll be every day next week in the afternoons, and registration is still open for that. Again, 20% off today if you use the code that Avi provided, Datum Friend 20. So in addition to that, we also teach a course, a 2-day course, and I've ran a webinar you may have attended called, Pandas for Excel Addicts. And in that Pandas for Excel Addicts, we developed some workflows to automate, essentially the economics calculations or these, type curve calculations. And so just to reuse some code, I have this Python module type curve monthly. Again, we develop all the details of what's in this code in the Pandas for Excel Addicts workshop. But today we're just going to use it, right? So in this type curve monthly, there's a function called type curve plot, and we just have to give it an API number. I'm going to borrow one that I have available here. And when we do that, this actually,
John, could you maybe zoom in a tad bit for us here? Perfect.
So this is intended to be assigned to a variable. And if we do that, what happens is actually the production history is pulled from our database. So here at Datum, we have a database that similar to, say, Drilling Infos or IHS Markets, has all of the public production data. I actually don't even know who this well belongs to, but we could look that up as well if we really needed to. Here, the red is the gas production, and the blue is the oil production. And in that type curve plot, we pull the data from the database. This is current to essentially the latest month. We fit type curves to it and produce this plot here. Likewise, there's another function that we developed again in the Pandas for Excel Addicts course within this type curve monthly that we call a type curve summary from database. Again, we provided an API number. We'll use the same one here. And that provides our summary table, right? So the IRR, the NPV10, the return on investment, and the payout. Right? So obviously, the price deck information that I'm pulling from here is not really current for today's oil prices, and because particularly the gas curve here is not a real great fit, and the numbers here aren't great. They're not exact or trustworthy numbers, but nevertheless, that could be improved. It's not really the point of what we're trying to do here today. So if you're familiar with PowerPoint, right? So we have this daily report. If you're familiar with PowerPoint format, well, obviously it's going to be a little hard to remain zoomed in because I need access to my file browser over here. So anyway, so if you're familiar with PowerPoint, I've pulled over this daily report file here, and if you're familiar with PowerPoint, you know that these are just simply zip files. So I can actually call unzip on that. It's an archive, and that will unzip the contents of that PowerPoint file. And if you know where to look in here, you can look in this PPT folder, and then media. And then if you look through these images, you can actually see that these images, specifically image 4 and 5, are the images of those type curves that you see on these slides, right? So one option would be to simply, returning to my Jupyter notebook, to simply take the plot that I've saved there and call, say, savefig, give it a name, image4.png. And there we have image4.png, the file I created. Here's a view of it. And we could just copy that into, replacing image4 in this PowerPoint folder. And that would and then, rezip the archive, and that would automatically update the PowerPoint file. However, that would only work in the event that the updated information we're providing is exactly the same. In other words, in this case, we have exactly 2 wells we're looking at, but what if I, on one day I needed to produce a report that had 7 wells, and on another day I needed to produce a report that had 13 wells. So we need a little bit better, more control over this, the kind of hacky way of simply, producing the images and copy them into the zip archive. Okay. And so what we're going to do instead is we're going to use a package called Python-ppx. And I have all of the packages in the repository in a Conda environment file. I'll talk more about this later. But the exact package that we're using here is this package right here, Python-pptx. And so what we'll do is I'll go ahead and import a couple of lines from that package. So I'll add them to my import statement up here. So I'm saying from pptx import presentation, and later we'll use something from pptx util called inches, and I'll talk about that. So I'll go ahead and import that. And from there, what we can do is I'm going to define a function that I'm going to call create PowerPoint, and it's going to take an input file as an argument and an output file as an argument. So what we're going to do is I'm going to instantiate a presentation. Again, this is from that pptx, Python pptx package with the input file. So the input file we're going to use, going back to the files I shared with you, is this datum template. So if we look at this datum template, it's just simply a blank PowerPoint presentation. Okay, it's a blank PowerPoint presentation. However, if I were to click a slide to create a new presentation from that, you'll see that it's themed with our datum styling, right? So for example, if I wanted to add a new slide, it gives me all these options to add new slides. Okay, so these are our datum themed PowerPoint slides. So that's all that the datum template file is a blank PowerPoint presentation themed with the datum style. Okay, and so that input file, when we call this function later, will be that datum template. Okay, so in addition to that, I have something that's called datum template markup, and let's go ahead and look at it. And this was generated. I have a script, and I'll share it with you at the end of the class, that basically goes through and annotates all of the placeholders for every type of slide layout there is. It annotates the layout with basically indexes that we can access from this Python pptx package. So for example, if we want to use this layout 4, it's telling us this is the layout 4, as well as, this is a placeholder for a picture. And we'll use this exact layout here shortly. So this datum template markup is just simply marked up. And you'll notice that some of the indexes, like this is index 12 and placeholder 4. I actually don't know enough about how these are automatically generated to control over that. I think, in my opinion, you would the first placeholder in a given slide would be index 1, but that's not the case. So you really have to analyze the slide in this way to be able to use this Python pptx. But there's a nice script to do that. I'll share with you again at the end of class. So we're only going to use this for information that we'll use to build up our PowerPoint slide. Okay. So let's return to Jupyter Lab quickly. We instantiate our presentation. The first thing we'll do is choose a title slide layout. And we're going to get that from this PRS object that we instantiate in the first line. It gives us a choice to choose slide layouts, and the index of the slide layout we want to choose is 0. That's our title slide. And so from that, we'll use that as a template to create a new slide with this add slide command. We'll use the title slide layout. So then we can set the value of the title. The value of the title is stored in this placeholders 12, and I'll go back to the markup to show you that, right? So returning to the marked up PowerPoint and the title slide, you'll notice that placeholder index 12 is the title here, right? So this is this line, and it's that line we want to place some new text on, right? So I'm assigning the variables title and subtitle accordingly to these placeholders. In this case, the subtitle is 11. And then with that, I can actually go ahead and give it some text, right? So I'm going to say text is, we'll just call it daily report. And subtitle text will say generated on, and we'll use some code to actually get today's date. And we'll format that from the date package today. So I need to go ahead and input the date package. That's in the from date time import date. So I think this might be a good place to test what we've done so far. So just in order to test it, we need to be able to write out the file. And so what we'll do is we'll say PRS save output file. Right? So if I execute that function, and then let's call the function with some arguments. So the input file is going to be that datum template, not the markup, but just the blank PowerPoint. And then the output file, I will call daily report webinar. So returning to the SharePoint folder, you'll notice there's no file here called daily report webinar. So let's go ahead and run this code and see what happens. This is just a deprecation that comes from our database. It's nothing to worry about here. So now we're actually running the file, the create PowerPoint package. Looks like I have a typo here. Let's let that run. And another typo. Okay, so now returning to the SharePoint folder and refreshing the browser. You see now this daily report webinar file that wasn't there previously is now there. And if we click on it to take a look at what it is, you'll see there, right? So this is our title slide, and you know, with the title daily report generated today, and that was, you know, all automatically. The date was automatically filled in from the code, of course. Okay, so for the time being, we'll go ahead and delete this guy because we want to do more, and we'll return to this momentarily. So next thing we want to do is add, you know, the information from above. So let's start by just saying API equals, well, we'll use this same API number. And so that's, we're going to generate a slide with the summary information for that API. And the way we would do it, I'll call it plot slide layout equals slide layouts. And if you recall what I said earlier, we want to use this index 4 layout. And we're going to add a slide that is the plot slide layout. And again, we want to give it a title. This time, the title text will be API equals, and we'll format that with code, with Python code, right? So just taking this API number that's here, replacing it there, and that will fill in the title, okay? So with that, we can then go ahead and create our plot. We'll use the same code from above, the type curve monthly, type curve plot, where the API number is the API number that I've specified here. And I've got a couple of commands. We're going to set the size of the plot, and we're going to save the figure. And we'll just save it with the API number as its name. So the name will be the API number followed by PNG. And I'm just going to specify a few other commands in the saving of the plot. I forgot one line here. I want to call this placeholder, that is slide placeholders 12. And again, let's return to the marked up template, and you'll see again on layout 4. So the layout 4 placeholder 12 is this picture placeholder right here. Okay, so the picture will replace this location. So in the placeholder, then we want to, sorry, I'm going to assign this to the variable pick, slide placeholders. So then pick is going to be, I'm sorry, this should be placeholders. These are just variable names. You could call them something different. So from pick, this pick is going to be placeholder insert picture. And the picture we want to insert is the one that we just saved. Like so. So let's see what happens when we run this. So I'm going to redefine, initialize this cell, which redefines the create PPT function. And then I'm actually running the function right now. Okay. So you can see just as a side effect of generating the figure, you get it printed to the screen. You could suppress that if you'd like. However, let's go back and now refresh or look at this daily report webinar, if you recall, I deleted that a second ago. And it's there again. Now we have a second slide. So the first slide looks identical to what it was. And we have a second slide that now has our figure there. Okay. So the next thing is we want to be able to put our summary table here. Now you could just use Pandas to convert the data frame table as its output to the screen to a PNG and do something similar. But there's actually a little bit more sophisticated way in which we can use it that allows us to actually have an actual PowerPoint table that will be editable in the PowerPoint if you desire to be able to do that. So again, I'm going to return to this. I'm going to delete this file because we'll be creating more here momentarily. So returning to our notebook, now we just want to add the code, right? So if you recall, I did import this PPTX util import inches. That just allows me to specify distances in inches. And for, I need to specify the distance in inches where I want my table to go. So the top, I'm going to put it 5.5 inches. This is again on the screen. The left side I'm going to put at 2 inches. The width, and I came up with these values just through some trial and error to see what looks right. And height, it's going to be 1. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another package. The package now is called PD to PowerPoint. PD to PowerPoint. This is another open source package which allows me to take a Pandas data frame and convert it to a Python table. So the way I'm going to do that is first I'm going to create the table using my type curve monthly package. Again, we created this package in our Pandas for Excel course. And from there, I'm going to use this type curve summary from database. The API number is going to be the API number as we defined it above. I also have another command that we call return data frame, which just returns the raw data frame object versus a formatted HTML object. So that's going to return a Pandas data frame into the variable df. And then from there, we can use this package df to table. I'll have to import it. So this is a function df to table that comes from the Pandas to PowerPoint package that I just showed you. Okay, so there's a function in there, df to table, that will allow us to convert our data frame into a table. And so the arguments here then are slide. So this is the slide, the same slide that we defined here to put our plot on. That's the same slide we want to add this table to. The data frame, the arguments left, top, width, height that were defined above. There's another argument called column formatters, which allows me to round. So I'm going to round all of the columns to 2 decimal places because the data frame, the raw data frame object just computes them to the machine precision of the computer. And so I'm going to use that to round. And then with that, we should be able to run this again. Again, reinitialize that thing, run this. Let's return, well, let's wait for it to run. Nope, I didn't rerun the cell up here, which brings in data frame to table into the namespace. So then like I have a typo. Yep, there's 2 T's in formatters. So now returning to our SharePoint drive. It appears I did not delete this file. So let me delete it and make sure it's gone. There seems to be some latency here, I guess, because I'm running a Zoom meeting while I'm trying to do this. When I was testing this, it certainly didn't take this long to delete a file. Okay, maybe I missed that. Okay, so just for the final time, let me run this. And that's going to recreate our PowerPoint, and you'll see when this is done how it looks. So again, returning to the SharePoint drive, refreshing here. So here's our slide now, right? So there we have our plot, and we have this native PowerPoint table. You can see it is editable. So if you wanted to manually edit it for whatever reason, again, this was generated from the code and the economics in Python, and then just using the Python PPTX package and the data frame to table function from the Pandas to PowerPoint. This is what we get, right? So if we can do this for one, I mean, this is the beauty of Python, right? If we can do this for one API, then it's fairly trivial to basically extend it, right? So now I can, instead of just a single API, I can pass it a list of APIs and put this in a for loop. So I'll just say for API in APIs. And just copy all of this. Tabbing it over. And now we can run that. And obviously that's, let me, let's see. That should be APIs. And then also let me just return over here to SharePoint and make sure I delete this file. Okay. So let's let that guy run. And I think you're gonna you already know the outcome, right? It's going to loop over those, it's going to create the whole report for us, right? So there are, we could take this further. We could basically then automate the conversion of the PowerPoint to say a PDF. We could automate the attachment of the PowerPoint or the PDF to an email that is then sent out to the whole team or something like that, right? And those kind of things are things we'll cover in the 2-day version of this webinar and for the course that we're planning on offering shortly. It'll be a course of the same name, a 2-day course, and we'll cover those kind of additional automation procedures, right? So looks like we're pretty close to being done there. Yep, it's returned. So let's go look at our new report. And you can see now that this has all been automated. And these are, clearly different wells. If you look through, the data is different. The API numbers are different. All the values are different. But that was completely automated. And in this case, it was over, I don't know, 10 or 12 wells. There's absolutely no reason that this couldn't run over 100 wells or run over every well in your company. Every morning, you could automate the run of this script as well. Now, I briefly discussed, automating emails. I know a lot of the kind of culture in companies is these types of reports are done by reservoir engineers and sent to their managers via email. Again, in my opinion, this is not the best way to do things. So let me offer you an alternative, because in particular in this case, we're not only slowed down by having to use PowerPoint in this case, but it's a proprietary software. I think most companies have it, but what about your mobile device? What if you wanted to look at this report on your mobile device? Is there an ability? Do you have the ability to do that? So a lot of times when we're doing data science or doing these types of reports, we're doing the data analysis in a Jupyter notebook anyway. So if we're doing the data analysis in a Jupyter notebook anyway, let's try to the extent we can, make the report in the Jupyter notebook, right? So we're going to start with a new notebook. As you probably know from Jupyter notebooks, you can basically intermingle code and rich text. In this case, I can have a title called daily report, and I can even go ahead and generate these types of outputs from code. So I'm going to write a code cell that translates Markdown. In this case, I'm going to have some text generated on. This will be that same command to automatically format the date, today's date. So if we run that, you can see that automatically this has been generated, right? And we can do more of the same, right? So we could basically turn this into a Markdown cell, give it the API number, call the print statement here. I'm sorry, the plotting code there. Call the table generation code there, and just for completeness, let's completeness of the demonstration, let's add a second API number. And a second plot. So we have effectively a report here. Now, we may not like to view it in the notebook because the person you're sending it to possibly doesn't have a running Jupyter instance or whatever. Well, we can make this more report-like by adding a little bit of metadata. Right? So what I'm going to do is in this cell over here, you'll notice that there's like slide type. And in this case, I have this first one set to skip. And then in the second one, I can set this slide type to slide, again, followed by that. For this code cell, I want to add a tag that I'll call hide. So I'm just adding some cell metadata. You can see that in the advanced tools there. There's some cell metadata now that in this cell, there's metadata that says hide. That's all I'm doing there. For this one, I'll set that to slide. For this cell, again, I want to set the metadata to hide. For this one, I'll also set the metadata to hide. And then finally, what I can do here is slide and set the metadata to hide and the metadata to hide. Right? So once I do that, I can save this guy. It's just a notebook called Jupyter Slides.ipynb. And what I can do is I can run a command on the command line. The command will be Jupyter NB convert. The file I want to convert, that's this file, Jupyter Slides. I have a configuration file that I'll talk a little bit about in a second. But from that, I can, the configuration file I called datum slide config. And the last thing I want to do is I'm just going to say to HTML. And we'll go ahead and run that. And returning to the file browser, you'll see that now this is just a plain HTML file. So I have this Jupyter Slides HTML. And I guess I didn't. So you'll notice that most of the code is hidden, but this first initiation cell is not hidden. It's because I forgot to add that hide metadata. So if I just add hide to this, save it, then I can return to the command line, run Jupyter NB convert. By the way, this is Jupyter NB convert is supplied with Jupyter and Jupyter Labs. So if you have those on your machine, you already have Jupyter NB convert. Everything here is built in open source. Returning to Jupyter Slides HTML, again, now you see something that looks very much like a report, right? This is just an HTML file. Of course, we could add additional text and data and everything, but it has the critical ingredients of everything we need here to make this into a report. We have the full power of HTML. This is an HTML file, so we have the full power of HTML and CSS. We can style this. We can put logos on it. We can make it look however we want. We can export it to a PDF. And if you really, really want, if you prefer slides for this kind of information, there's actually built-in HTML slide capability as well. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to, this folder was called Jupyter Slides.html for a reason. So I'm going to return to this Jupyter NB convert and just remove that to HTML on the end, and that will automatically produce this file Jupyter.slides.html. And when I open that, this is HTML, but it's formatted to look like a presentation, right? So as I scroll through, you see something that looks very much like my PowerPoint slides from before, okay? Now, I built this sort of by hand in the notebook, right? But it turns out we can actually, with code, generate notebooks. And so I've already got the code to do that prepared, and it's just Python code. So I'm gonna run Python generate notebook report, and I get a deprecation warning there, but what you see is there's a new file called report.ipynb, and this was automatically generated for all of those APIs that we looked at for the PowerPoint slide, okay? This was automatically generated by code. Now, you'll notice the code's not run. Well, we can use NB convert to do that too. So we can say Jupyter NB convert report, we'll say to notebook, execute. So now it's telling me that it's executing that notebook with the kernel, Python. Just give it a few minutes here, a few seconds rather. Shouldn't take too long. I'm gonna go ahead and close a few windows here. And shouldn't take too much longer. It does have to make database calls. So it's pulling all of that public data in real time into the notebook from our database, fitting the type curve, and then, and doing this for all of them in there. So now if we look at our report.mbconvert, this file, now you'll see that everything is executed, all the plots are populated, everything's there, right? So we used code to generate the notebook. We used code to run the notebook. And again, if you really prefer it to look like slides, we can do the same thing here, right? So we can say Jupyter MB convert. This time, running it there. And now we have a plain HTML file that, you know, here I'm serving it from Jupyter Lab, but you could hang this on any web page. Well, that's the wrong one. What I'm looking for is report.mbconvert.slides. So again, we're serving this in Jupyter Lab, but it could be hung on any web page. And, you know, in this case, you could automate this to run every day at 8 a.m. and automatically deploy to a website that your manager has the link bookmarked so he can check it in real time every day, you know, without the need to dig through an email or anything like that. So this has all of those wells, the 10 or 15 or how many ever we did for the PowerPoint. Right? This is all native. So in this case, I didn't use any features or packages that weren't part of a standard, you know, Anaconda type Jupyter Lab setup. Right. So I didn't have to interact with PowerPoint in any way, do anything like that. Right? So just as a final thing that we could do here is we could actually, instead of, you know, instead of having it generate, you know, 15 slides for 15 wells, we could just make it interactive. And so if we look at what's happening here, let me put some space in here. You'll see that all I've done here is create a new function that I call create plot and table. It has a default API number, but that's not important. In fact, I don't even need that, right? So it just takes an API number, and produces the plot and displays the data frame. Now, in this case, I didn't make any effort to make it pretty. We could control the layout of this. We could certainly put this below to make it consistent with the others, but it's kind of not the point here. But so, you know, basically when I run this function, it creates this plot down here. Now, if all I do is use a package called IPyWidgets, import this interact decorator, and just provided the interact decorator with a list of API numbers, and I just have to make sure that that decorator sits right on top of the function. So now when I run this, now what I get is actually something interactive, right? So I can actually go in and select the values. Now, again, every time I make a selection, it's making a call to the database, pulling in the most current data, fitting the type curve, and doing the economics. So you could pre-compute all that and store it, if you will, and that's the reason it takes a few seconds before it updates. But nevertheless, this update is in real time, right? So another thing we'll cover in the you know, the 2-day version of this course is how to deploy this right here as a web application, so that anytime you go and select an API, it will pull the most current data from the database, run the economics on it, and produce these kind of numbers. This would be, you know, kind of the most sophisticated thing you can do. But as you can see, you know, the code here is not sophisticated in any way, right? Basically it's just this single wrapper here. The sophistication here, it really comes in deploying this, but it's not that difficult. You know, particularly, you know, in this case, running it as a Jupyter app is trivial, right? So again, every time I make a selection here, I'm getting the most up-to-the-date data. Now, in our case, our data is only monthly; it's public data. But in your company, you might have, you know, daily production data, right? So you could be running these type of analysis and deploy an application like this. And you know, we're using a fairly sophisticated, you know, just type curve and economics here, but the power is at your fingertips, is really limitless into what you can do And if you take our energy data science course, we build a fairly sophisticated dashboard using some other packages, Panel and Bokeh. And of course, if you decide to take the 2-day version of this course we'll be offering, we'll go into more detail about how you actually deploy this. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and end this webinar, at least my time, but happy to take any questions here in the remaining 4 or 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks, John. This will be recorded as well, and I'll be uploading the link and sending it out in an email to everybody. So if anybody wants to review any of this, it will be in a recorded video.
Yeah, I mentioned several times during my talk that I would follow up with the files, and I never did that. So let me just show you. If we return to the GitHub site, github.com/datum /Python for PowerPoint. Again, this is where we started the class with the link to those files, which you'll also find in here are basically everything you need to reproduce all of the files. Now, at least the code, you can't actually run this code because you don't have access to our database. It requires access to the database, but the code itself is all there. Again, like for example, the code that to generate the notebook report is here. You can see it's not a lot of code to basically programmatically generate that notebook report that then you can turn into slides or whatever. There's some configuration to when you run MB convert to, in this case, what it mainly does is it automatically deploys to slides, and it removes the input and output prompts. So like normally in a Jupyter notebook, whenever you run it, you have this like 15, 16, those are input prompts. Often when you're doing a report, you don't want that in there. And so that's all that configuration file does, is it removes those input and output prompts. Finally, if you look at these, the notebooks, the PowerPoint, Python for PowerPoint, most of these start off as blank, right? Because I wrote them during the class here, but I have the full version in the branch called solution. So if you go to this where it talks about the main branch, if you go to the one that says solution, then you can actually see all of the code that I used, similar to the code I wrote in class. And in particular, one thing you'll find here is this analyze PowerPoint function. So this guy is what generates this marked up document, right? So if you have your blank template and you run it through this function, so you run your blank template through, and your output would be the marked up one, then that will generate the markup that you can then use as a reference as you build up your PowerPoints. And I should mention that I took this from a great website, Practical Business Python. I took this analyze PowerPoint file from there, function rather. Right? So all of the basically complete code for the class that I use today is available on GitHub there in the solutions branch. So there were a couple of questions that came in I didn't see. Is the database stored in Excel workbook, or you do have options? So our database is a SQL database. So we're actually making live SQL database calls over the internet right there. You can store it as anything that you can read in Python, which is pretty much anything. Obviously, Excel workbooks are one option, probably the worst of all options you could choose. You could, the second best option would be just a text file, a CSV file, or if you wanted to have real fast access locally, you could store it in a Parquet format, which Pandas can read. Any more questions? Okay, it's 2:00. Thank everyone for attending.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. I'll follow up with an email to everybody after this. So. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ricardo. All right, John, I'm going to go ahead and close this up. It doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in.
Okay, see you later.
Sounds good. See you, John.